What you smiling about, Teresa?
Nothing.
You gonna call some expired listings?
I need to get back on it.
Yeah.
I am.
You're gonna do it too?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm very excited.
So really quickly, we're not really gonna talk about Vulcan today. We're really gonna talk about expired listings and how you guys can leverage your time better to get more listings through expireds. Oh, Scott, you stole mine. You got my cheat sheet there underneath it. There we go. Will you pass those back? There's one on each side there. Okay, so this is going to be an interactive class. If you're watching this live, everything that I've handed out is in a link in the comments section. And Lisa is monitoring if anybody makes a comment. So if anybody comments or has any questions, Lisa, just let me know. All right, so let's jump right in here. 12 closings per year added to your sales volume, working about 10 hours a week to get those sales. Sounds like a pretty good deal, right? I'd like to be able to do that. We're going to go over why we should call expired listings. So expired listings are listings like any other listing, and listings are leverage, right? Make sure we're there. Listings are the highest dollar per hour use of your time. And so the more listings you have, the more of the process you can leverage out to other people. And the more you can take, I think in general, about 4 times the number of listings that you can buyers. So if you're closing 15 buyers a year and you're feeling maxed out, if you flipped that, you could close 60 sellers in roughly the same amount of time. It's a big difference in your income. Now, it's not that easy to get there, and you got to do that through a number of different lead pillars. I think starting out, expired listings is one of the best ways to get there. As you think about this, and as you learn how to do expired listings, you should be able to set one expired listing appointment for every 3 hours or so of calling that you make once you get to be good at calling expired listings. This is going to mean that you're going to have to learn the scripts, you're going to have to set up properly, and you're going to have to commit to being a student of scripts and expired listings. But I've seen lots of people do this successfully, and you can do it too. Something else that makes expired listings a good place to start is they've already identified themselves as sellers. You know, they tried to sell, and it could have been the decisions that they made that had the listing fail to sell. It could have been their previous real estate agent didn't give them the proper advice. Could have been a combination of both, or maybe they weren't properly motivated. But you can learn all those things on your listing appointments and through your phone calls with them, and determine whether or not they're going to be able to sell. It's ultimately, all listings are sellers' decisions. You can tell them what you think they should do, and if they are willing to do them, you can turn them into sellers. But let's just jump right into how to go about making expired calls. So the first thing that you need to know, is there any way to get that me off the screen there? Oh, that's a big deal, but is that when you're calling expired listings, you have to start calling them at 8 o'clock in the morning. That's because that's when the telemarketing calls allow you to start making phone calls. So if you don't start calling at 8 o'clock in the morning, what's going to happen is every other agent who's calling expireds will. And then what's going to happen is by about 8:30 in the morning, they will have received 20 or 30 phone calls from other agents soliciting their business. They're going to get fatigued, and it's going to become a waste of time. They're going to start tuning you out, not answering their phone, or they will have already made an appointment with somebody else, or they're just shut down and they're getting ready for work and they're not taking calls anymore. So the first thing you should do is call expired listings that are newly expired at 8 o'clock in the morning. Once you finish, that should only take about 20 or 30 minutes. Dive right into older expireds. Now, there is a little bit of a difference between a new expired listing and an old expired listing. If you go back 6 months and start calling expired listings, there's very few people calling them. So they're going to be much more receptive to having a conversation with you, but we know they're a little bit less motivated. So they're not necessarily right now business, whereas the new expireds, literally you can get an appointment with them that day and you can get them back on the market a week later and close them in this market in 30 days. So it's right now business. So the way that you should do this is you should call for about 50 minutes, take a 10-minute break, check your email, go to the bathroom, and then jump back on and call for another 50 minutes. If you do this 2 or 3 times in the course of a sitting, you should be able to get an appointment. But if you try to do it any longer than that, you're going to get fatigued and you're not going to be effective. Any questions on that 8 a.m.? It's tough because if you're calling at 8 a.m., it means you're up and you're actually doing things a lot earlier than 8 a.m. So if you're going to be calling at 8 a.m., you need to be up and ready to call a lot earlier. And to be effective calling expired listings, you've got to be in the right mindset. Teresa, you've called expired listings, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are they easy? They tell you no a lot?
No, because I typically go back older expired,
Okay.
so I have good conversations with them.
Yeah, because nobody else is calling them, right?
Right.
So they're willing to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
Any of you guys ever call new expireds?
Yep.
What do they say when you call them?
They are not happy. And if you're rarely, unless it's the first one you called that day, they probably heard from somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time they'll at least have a short conversation because they want to tell you why they don't want to do it. And
Right.
And then you need to break through that.
Right.
And then move on.
Right, and so if you don't have the right mindset for that and they just try to blow you off, how successful do you think you're going to be?
Not successful.
Right, so to get your mindset right, you need to be prepared to start making the phone calls. You need to be up, showered, dressed, ready to go by 7:30 in the morning. You need to practice for 10 minutes before you start making phone calls. You need to get your mind ready because what's going to happen when you start making phone calls is they're going to say they don't want to sell their house anymore. And if you just believe them, then you're just going to look at them and say, well, okay, well, have a nice day. And then you're not going to get an appointment. So you have to remember that you're going to have the right mindset to be able to push through some of those things. When you're on the phone with somebody, though, you need to make sure that you're standing up straight, your posture is good, you're smiling. And I know that a lot of times we think that we can sit down at our desk and start making phone calls and have our tone of voice and our energy sound right. And you can do that for about 5 minutes. But if you're going to make phone calls for 50 minutes and you're sitting down, eventually you're going to be having your hand on the desk like this. And then that one person who would have given you an appointment, you're going to be like this. And it's going to reflect through in the way that you're talking. And if you get that person on the phone and you reflect poorly in the way that you're talking, you're very unlikely to get them to listen to you. So it's very important to use good posture. I recommend getting a stand-up desk. I also recommend getting one of these. Wendy, you were saying you have one of these.
I do own one, yes.
Use it.
When I first started calling expired listings, this saved my life. Literally, I would have my stand-up desk and I would have this sitting right here. And I'd make my phone calls standing up. Because when you're new at this and they throw you off, if you don't remember what you're supposed to say next, you're gonna not be successful.
The idea is you can quickly flip to whatever
Whatever-
objection they
right.
give you. You're ready for the next.
Right, so you start here and you've got your script, right? All right, Scott, you're going to be my expired seller really quickly. No, Teresa, you're going to be my expired seller really quickly. You're going to pick somebody who's going to be nice.
Oh, come on.
Right? And I say, hi, is this Teresa? I call and I say, hi, is this Teresa?
Yes, it is.
Hi, Teresa. My name's Ryan Ward. I'm with Premier Atlanta Real Estate. The reason for my call is your home shows up as off the market. And I was curious if it's sold or if you plan to interview the right agent to sell it now.
Not sure, it did not sell. We're contemplating putting it back on the market.
So your objection was not sure, we're contemplating it. I can flip right over while you're saying that and find that. And I can say, oh, okay. Well, just out of curiosity, if you were able to sell it, where were you going to go? So I immediately know what I'm supposed to say, and the people that you're talking to don't know that you have this great little tool to have and make sure.
Carrying it out like he was.
Well, no, you're going to be at your stand. I didn't bring my stand-up desk. You'll be standing here, and it'll be on the desk. Your computer's right here, and you can just flip through it like this with your headset on. All right. Do not call list. Remember that if you call somebody on the do not call list, you could be subject to a fine, and they'll let you know very quickly. So compliance for this is really up to you. Make sure that if you choose to call somebody on the do not call list, that you are solely responsible for the consequences if they report you. I'm not going to tell you to call people on the do not call list. You're just going to have a much smaller list of people to call if you choose not to. So track your success. I gave you guys a handout, the last page of this. Okay, people make mistakes here all the time. So you've got to know if you're doing a good job when you're calling expired listings. The best people, a good metric to use is to know that for every 20 conversations you have, you should be able to get one appointment. So begs the question is, what's a conversation? A live conversation with somebody is a conversation. It can be a hang up, it can be never call me again, or it can be somebody who's willing to talk to you. But if you talk to somebody, that's a conversation. So a lot of people will say things like, we've got another agent, we've already put it back on the market. Those are conversations. But 1 out of 20 people, you should be able to go through your dialogue with them and get an appointment. Now, when you first start, that number is probably going to be closer to 1 in 50, 1 in 60, could be 1 in 100. I think it took me, when I first started calling, I don't know if you remember, but I called and I probably talked to 800 or 900 people before I got an appointment. It was a couple of weeks. And I felt pretty bad. And I felt like I wasn't very good at it. And I wasn't, But it's because I thought I was smarter than everything I learned about it, right? I got on the phone and started doing whatever I wanted to do instead of following the outline. I wasn't fully dressed. I wasn't at a stand-up desk. I didn't have a headset. I just thought that, my wonderful personality was going to get people to want to work with me. And it doesn't work like that, especially not with expired listings. So you need to use a tracking sheet to follow what you've got going on. The goal would be really to talk to 20 people in a given day. It'll take you 2.5 hours or so using a good dialer like Vulcan or Mojo Dialer, any one of the dialers that you use. I know that we personally use Vulcan, you guys have used Vulcan, but it'll take you about 2.5 hours to get to 20 conversations, and if you do it right, you could get an appointment. The other reason that, one more thing, sorry, let's go back. How do we get back? To 8 a.m. Anybody know why you're supposed to make phone calls in the morning rather than in the afternoon in real estate?
Get more yeses in the morning.
Why is that?
Maybe you're making fresh, I guess.
That's exactly right. You get more yeses in the morning than you do in the afternoon.
By the afternoon, they've said yes all they want to.
Right. I think the average person makes 30,000 decisions in a day. You don't think about it,
Wow.
but by the time the day is over, you're fatigued. You don't want to say yes to anything else unless you have to. So you're much more likely to get a yes in the morning because you haven't said yes to anything else yet. So tracking your numbers. So as you're making phone calls is when you're supposed to track your outcomes here. So this tracking sheet, a lot of times we want to take lots of notes when we're talking to somebody on the phone. And when we're making expired phone calls, It's kind of the KISS rule, right? Keep it simple, stupid. So you want to just, did you talk to him on the phone? Did you get an appointment? Yes or no? Your outcome. They hung up on me, got an appointment, told me to call back later. The only thing you're doing on these phone calls is trying to set an appointment. You're not trying to go on a listing appointment with them on the phone. You're just trying to get an appointment with them. You're going to do a follow-up call later if you need to, but this is only to set an appointment with them. So that's the only thing that's on this sheet. You need to track this so that you know whether or not you're getting better, or whether or not you need to practice some more scripts, or if you're on track to be successful with expired. Does that make sense? Because if you sit there and get bogged down because you had a conversation with somebody and you've written down that it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house and it didn't sell for all this, you may want to jot down a couple of quick things, but don't stop and pause and take notes. You need to move on to the next call. You need to be calling, not note-taking, not note-taking. It's only going to be an hour and a half or so before you're done. So just keep moving through that. So the expired mindset. Let's think about who you're talking to here and why this can sometimes be a little bit more difficult than when you get a referral from your friend who wants to sell their house. You get a referral from a friend, right? Wendy, you call me and say that Teresa, you were talking to Teresa and she's thinking about selling her house, and you give me her number because she said it was okay for me to call. Right? And I call Teresa and I'm like, hey, Teresa, it's Ryan Ward with Premier Atlanta Real Estate. I got your phone number from Wendy. How are you today? That's a very open, friendly conversation. She knows Wendy. Well, these people are nothing like that at all. I mean, if you think about it, they made a decision to put their house on the market. Somebody probably came in there and told them to declutter, right? Maybe they came in and took photographs with an iPhone, standing in the mirror in the bathroom, and the marketing was terrible. They have no idea what happened during showings. They got no feedback from their agent. They don't know why it didn't sell. And they went through all this trouble. They had hopes and dreams about moving on with their life, going somewhere else. And here they are 3 months later in the hottest real estate market ever. The only people that they've ever heard of with a house that didn't sell. They're not going to be happy when another real estate agent calls them to try to solicit business, right? I mean, if you think about it, especially if they get 30 phone calls between 8 and 8:30 in the morning. So you have to make that connection with them in your mind, that they are not generally going to be very friendly on the phone, and it's not their fault. I mean, they had hopes and expectations that did not work out the way they wanted it to. But do also remember that they agreed to work with another real estate agent, right? Maybe it just wasn't the right real estate agent. So if you can cut through their anger and noise, which we'll talk about a little bit, you can get them to stay on the phone with you. But they're likely going to be disappointed or angry or both about the previous outcome. And I certainly would be if I was a seller. I trusted somebody that I was going to pay a whole lot of money to sell my house when everybody else's houses are selling, and here I am as the only one that didn't sell. But they also probably don't actually understand why it didn't sell. So there's an opportunity for you to have a conversation around that with them and to get an appointment based on that, right? Tell me why it didn't sell. To get to that appointment, you're going to have to use a script. Scripts don't sound fun, do they? James, do you use scripts?
Yep.
Why do you use scripts?
Because the specific words are important, and writers put very specific words in there for particular reasons that sometimes you don't necessarily understand at the time, but then you find out later.
Right, and then if you once you've internalized those scripts and they come out in your voice rather than in the voice that you think they're going to come out when you read it for the first time, they don't sound like a script anymore, right?
That's correct, yeah.
They sound believable. They keep you focused on asking the right questions. And, you know, even if you don't go in direct order with the script, at least they give you kind of an outline of informational points that you need to be able to talk to them about. And fundamentally, scripts will give you better results. Believe me, when I first started and I went through my first 900 conversations and didn't get an appointment, and then finally realized that if I just learned some scripts that I'd be more successful, immediately things started to change. So don't do what I did when I first started. Just learn the scripts, and it's not that hard. You're not going to sound good. You're going to sound bad, but you should know that. I mean, you need to know that you're not going to sound good when you first start, right? But that's not a reason to quit. That's a reason to realize that you need to get better if this is something that you want to do, right? I mean, I'm certainly not going to sugarcoat it by saying that you're going to get out there on day one with your scripts up on the board and you're going to read them to somebody and it's going to sound like you mean it. But if you do it enough and you practice enough and you practice on a friend rather than on a consumer, when you get to consumers, it's going to make it a whole lot easier for you to sound good and for people to want to continue to talk to you. It's going to make you more productive because you're not going to spend 20 minutes on a phone call with an expired listing trying to get an appointment. You're going to spend 5. If you're on a phone call with an expired listing for 20 minutes, you haven't done your scripts right. You're not trying to learn everything about them this is what's different. If I call Teresa from Wendy's referral, I may want to spend 30 minutes on the phone with her. Right? I may want to just build some rapport, get to know her, really just kind of get a general sense of what's going on. With an expired listing, I want to know if they still want to sell their house and if they want me to come show them why they should choose me. That's it. Then I get in front of them and then I go through why they should choose me. But to go through all of the rest of it is to talk yourself out of an appointment. Be real clear with staying on point with your scripts. Do not start having long conversations with people on the phone until you get an appointment. If you want to talk to them after you get the appointment, great. But don't sit there for 30 minutes and then have them say, well, I've got to talk to my wife. Can you call me later? You just wasted an opportunity to get another appointment. And you run out of time quickly with expireds. Okay, so scripts matter. You'll get better results. Practice more. If you don't sound good, you're not going to sound good. They will make you more productive. They're going to ensure that you get the information that you need and make sure that you keep them printed out. So when I first started, if this was my wall before I got this, I had my script and then I had every objection and every handler on the wall right behind me printed out. And so that when I got on the phone and I got somebody on the phone, I would literally stand next to it. And then after a while, there's only a handful of objections that they have, right? So when they said, I'm going to go back with the same agent, I knew exactly which piece of paper I needed to look at. And then eventually, after doing that enough times, I didn't need to look at the paper anymore. And it starts to become natural, and all of a sudden, you start having good conversations with people. Don't skip the scripts. So one of the things that I found once I started getting appointments was that I needed to do some additional learning and resources to help me understand the process a little bit better. The best place that I found was looking at a bunch of the information that Mike Ferry put out. There's videos. His scripts are the same scripts that Diana Kokoska uses in bold. She's changed them a little bit, but they're fundamentally the same. And just about anybody else that you go to will use the original Mike Ferry script with some words changed out so that they can soften it or make it sound a little bit more like what they think it should say, but it's all the same. Are you going to find a new agent? Where were you going to go? Why didn't it sell? Have you chosen a new agent? Everybody asks the same questions. But Tom Ferry and Mike Ferry have great presentations online. They're free. Just Google them. Eisenhower Coaching is another great place to watch a handful of videos on expired listings. At first, just get your scripts down. But eventually you're going to want to look into it a little bit further. RedX, which is a dialer service, they have some fantastic information as well on how to do this properly. One of the most difficult things to do for expired listings is to actually role play, because you don't want somebody else to hear how bad you sound. Right? That's the worst part, is you have to get over that. But if that's what you're thinking, then you know you're not doing a good enough job already. So you need to be doing it. And that's the whole point. And the worst person to practice on is a consumer. You need to practice so Teresa, we used to practice these. You and I, we would call each other and go through practicing some of these scripts. And whenever I would practice with you, if I made phone calls right after that, I did a much better job than if I didn't, because it got me in the right mindset. It reminded me that I'm not supposed to be doing a bunch of the things in my head that are stopping me from doing it. So practice. Teresa, call Claire. You said you're going to call him, right? When we leave here, figure it out. Talk to somebody about the scripts and do it. Just do it for 5 to 10 minutes. When you're doing the scripts, it's really important that you do one thing. If you're the person that's the consumer, always give the other person the appointment at the end. You can put them through 2 or 3 different objections, but make sure they get the appointment, because you want them to learn that they can get the appointment. So it's really important when you're doing scripts. So mentally prepare, print your tracking sheet, prepare your list to call, practice for 5 to 10 minutes, mentally prepare, and then dial. And I forgot one thing on here before you dial. In your scripts, you're going to be asking for an appointment. And when you're asking for an appointment, you're going to be saying, are you available tomorrow at 2 or Thursday at 4? So always check your calendar and pick your 2 places that you're going to offer to them before you dial. Because if you don't know when you have slots available for them and you think it's time to ask for the appointment, you're going to stumble. So you need to know when you're available to meet them. So if I'm calling you, Teresa, and I go through my scripts, right? And I say, have you already chosen an agent to work with you?
No.
No, you haven't? Well, Teresa, I'd like to apply for the job to sell your home. Are you familiar with the techniques that we use at Premier Atlanta Real Estate to sell homes?
No, not.
Really? When would be a good time to show you? Tomorrow at 2, or would 6 o'clock work better? If I don't know when I have an opening, I'm never going to ask for the appointment. So you must check your calendar.
So what if they say I have to talk to my husband first?
That's perfectly fine. We can do this. Let's pencil in a time now. We can always erase it and move it later. That's why you use the pencil and eraser, right? So let's just pencil something in, and then what I'll do is I'll call you this afternoon, and if we need to erase it and change it, we can do that. But my schedule fills up pretty quickly. Right now I know I can do it at 2 o'clock or 6 o'clock. Which would work better for you? Okay. And then they'll go, can you do it at 5? And you're like, okay, sure, I can do it at 5. And then I'll call you back later to confirm. And that's it, then you get off the phone. But always pencil it in and erase it, because everybody can get that visual. So, we here at Premier Atlanta Real Estate love Vulcan. We did a lot of research on dialers and found from what a lot of people said that they have the best information, but you can also use Mojo or RedX. Vulcan is a single line dialer, Mojo is a triple line dialer. So you can actually dial more numbers using the Mojo dialer than you can with Vulcan 7.
And you prefer Vulcan 7, correct? That's the one you
Yes.
have available to us.
Vulcan 7 to me has more accurate phone numbers for homeowners than the others do. So, you know, at the end of the day, you really are still trying to leverage time. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to leverage time properly, you want to be able to at least have the right phone numbers to call. If you're just dialing a bunch of wrong phone numbers, you're really not going to... I guess if you use Mojo and it's got a 3 triple line dialer, you can call more people and make up for it. But if the numbers aren't as good, Vulcan 7 is where I would go with. Really quickly, on the dialer topic, there are other types of phone calls you can make. Circle prospecting phone calls. Circle prospecting is great around just listed, just solds. Circle prospecting is just that, right? So you have a house. Don't laugh. House. I just sold it. It's in this neighborhood, and I'm going to draw a circle around it, and I'm going to call all the other houses around it. That's circle prospecting.
Also, if you have an open house that
Yeah.
has 38 people that come to it,
Yeah.
you can call everybody in that neighborhood
Right.
before the house sells and say, hey,
Right.
I have a list of 38 people who are looking in this area.
Right.
Would you be interested in meeting?
Right.
And where do you get that information? You wouldn't get it off Vulcan,
Circle prospecting. Vulcan offers the ability to
Circle Prospect.
circle prospect.
So what if you're an agent and you can't afford Vulcan 7 and you're on your own?
Come to Premier Atlanta Real
It-
Estate.
If you're
Just that.
if you're an agent and you're looking
Yeah.
for a lead source,
Yeah,
something like an expired. If I were to
because you can find it on FMLS, but you don't have any information on the seller.
So if I were going to look at Lisa today and it's January 15th and I'm like, I've had it with Atlanta, I can't do the weather here anymore, I'm out, I'm moving. And I had to restart my career somewhere else in a place that's warmer, right?
Like Miami?
I would call expired listings. That would be my initial lead generation activity, is to call expired listings because they have their hand up already, and I would call for sale by owners as well.
Right.
But I don't know anybody in this new place, and expired listings are immediate right now business. These are people that literally just had their home for sale yesterday, and it didn't sell. And so I don't know if I didn't have enough money
For Vulcan?
for Vulcan, I'm not sure what I would do. Maybe I would
Yeah.
find a brokerage that had a lot of open houses for me to do or something like that. But for my own personal lead generation activities, if I started with nothing else, I would start with expired listings. I say expired, but that also includes withdrawn listings.
Yeah.
When you're calling expired listings, they're kind of grouped in there together. And of course, people withdraw listings for a lot of the same reasons that listings expire. They're unhappy with their real estate agent, they made a mistake. I've closed sales from people that had their home on the market for 5 days and withdrew their listing. You call, you run through your script, right? Hi, is this Teresa?
Yes, it is.
Hi, Teresa. My name is Ryan Ward. I'm with Premier Atlanta Real Estate.
Ryan?
Hi, how are you, Teresa? Hey, listen, Teresa, the reason for my call is your home shows up as off the market, and I was curious if you plan to still sell it, or you're going to hire the right agent to sell it for you?
I have a great agent.
You're supposed to be the withdrawn person that just came off the market.
Oh, sorry.
So it doesn't matter if it's withdrawn or expired. You're really just going to, if they, because what'll happen with a withdrawn listing is they'll say something like, we just picked the wrong
COVID.
agent. Oh yeah, COVID.
Yeah, COVID, so now I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying put.
Well, COVID is a condition. It's not an objection. And it's a little bit of a different way to handle a condition. And you can't necessarily overcome a condition.
So I've gotten that in calling withdrawn and expired.
Uh-huh.
They, withdrew during COVID, and now they're like, we're not going anywhere. What would you say?
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, that's a hard objective for
Well-
me to overcome.
You can ask
What I
them.
would say is the same thing that I would say to
I do ask why.
what I would say is the same thing that I would say to anybody, because I need to understand if it's an objection or a condition.
You're on that sold.
So a lot of them say, just like we would say, yes, I know I can sell my house and make a lot of money, but I have nowhere to go. Like, there's no inventory.
Well, if they had their house for sale before,
Mhm.
okay, somewhere along the way, they had something of a plan,
That's true.
right? So had your home sold before, where were you going to go?
Like I have one that said.
And it's almost
he's going to
always
rent. He was going to rent.
he was going to rent
He was gonna rent.
as
He'll
opposed.
Sell and rent, and now he doesn't wanna do that.
What changed?
He doesn't really give specifics,
That's the question,
but I need
right?
to.
Right. The question is, so at one point in time, you had your house for sale, right? And it didn't sell. And so now what you had decided to do originally was sell, and now what you're telling me is something different. So you need to identify what that difference is. And that's what you would talk about with them. So you would ask them what changed. You know, had your home sold, where were you going to go? So that question does a couple of things. One, it takes them back to their original motivation, which is always important, because at the end of the day, if they're not motivated, you don't have somebody who can make the right decisions. If you've ever had a listing before, if you've gone on a listing appointment and they're like, well, you know, we would sell, but, you know, only if we can get this much for it. And I mean, we haven't really thought very much about where we're going to go. Really? I mean, how is that person going to be willing to price their home at a price that's going to cause it to sell, or do the things necessary that's going to make it sell? Right? That's so your questions are going to identify whether or not they're legitimate sellers. And almost, not always, but a lot of times your first response is to go directly back to, well, had your home sold, where were you going to go? Right? So Teresa, you had your home for sale before, came off the market, but where were you going to go?
Well, was hoping to move closer to work.
Closer to work, that makes sense. When did you want to be there?
Didn't really have a time frame. Depends on if I could get a certain amount for my home.
Well,
So I was
of
gonna-
course.
We're gonna hold out
We
until.
definitely want to make the most amount of money.
But,
Agree
I'm
with
not
people.
sure. Yeah.
Definitely want to make the most amount of money. We all do. I certainly would want to make the most amount of money if I were selling my house right now too. That's a great idea.
Yeah, can't decide if we should remodel to try to make, more,
Yeah.
what we would like, or sell it as is.
So Teresa, you had the house on the market for a while. I've got it pulled up on my computer right now. It looks like a fantastic house. What do you think stopped it from selling? I mean, it looks great, right?
I have no idea.
No idea? What did your agent say? Did you get any feedback from buyers?
I'm just in a very unusual neighborhood. Prices are all over the board.
So let me ask you a question, Teresa. How'd you pick your last real estate agent?
A friend.
A friend of yours? The real estate agent's a friend of yours? What did you like best about what they did?
I think she took professional photography. I thought that looked really well. Other than that, I didn't get a whole lot of communication.
So good pictures, maybe didn't get a whole lot of communication. You're talking to me. Hold that there.
Don't make me aware of that.
It's okay. Okay, so
Yeah, I think, it seemed like once we listed, she kind of went dark. I was always having to reach out to her to get feedback.
Oh, that's frustrating.
I don't really understand the process. Where are we at? What's next?
oh no.
So that was a little unnerving.
Anything else you feel like?
Stressful.
Yeah, well, of course, you've got your house on the market. You deserve to know what's going on. Is there anything else that you can think of that they maybe should have done different?
Poor communication didn't sell my house.
Yeah. I
Didn't
know.
bring the buyer.
So, what are you going to expect from the next real estate agent that you choose to?
A much better job.
A much better
House
job.
sold.
Sell the house, right? Of course.
And be honest if we need to do the updates to get the price we want.
So you want somebody that's going to be honest, that's going to communicate with you and get the house sold, right? Have you already chosen another agent to work with?
No.
No. Teresa, I'd really like to apply for the job to sell your house.
Well, you
Are you-
sound like a really nice guy, so I would be more
If
than
they were
happy to
all
talk
like
to you.
Teresa, everybody would call expired listings. But that's just not how it goes. Although what you will find is that 90% of your appointments will go like that. The ones that you get, that's the way they will talk to you. Sometimes you'll have to go through a couple of different objections to get there.
Sorry.
But at the end of the day, I just read right down the list of the script questions, right? And so the script questions go very simply. Just out of curiosity, Teresa, since you're the person I'm talking to, if you'd been able to sell your house, where were you going? When did you originally plan to be there? What do you think stopped your home from selling? Stopped your home from selling is an intentional word there too, because something stopped it from selling. Was it you, the seller? Was it the agent? Was it marketing? Whatever it was, something stopped it. How did you pick your last agent? What did you like best about your last agent? What should your last agent have done different? What will you expect from your next agent? Have you already chosen your next agent? I'd like to apply for the job. Are you familiar with what I do to sell homes? No, you're not? Really? When would be the best time to show you? Tomorrow at 2 or tomorrow at 6 work? Those are the script questions that you have. Okay.
Real quick on the
Real quick.
FISBOs.
On the FISBOs.
Are those, I haven't seen those in Vulcan.
FISBOs are in Vulcan.
Are they?
Yeah, they're in a little, they have their own file. FISBOs are a little bit of a different animal. Now, I didn't want to go in this class into the expired listing appointment, but so I'll talk about the FISBO thing also, is that FISBO, they're very eager to give you an appointment because they want somebody to come look at their house, right? They are a little bit of a longer term follow-up to actually turn them into a client than an expired listing. So with the FISBO, you can get an appointment to go see their house. I don't recommend using the I may have a buyer for your house approach. That's not what you should be saying to somebody to get an appointment, because unless you have a buyer that's a match for that house, you're lying. Don't lie. But if you get an appointment, you can follow up with them, ask them how their open house did, send them market updates from the neighborhood, ask them if they have any questions. Just be of service to them, come from contribution, and when their home doesn't sell in 3 months, if you've followed up with them properly, they may call you. Right? With an expired listing, if you get an appointment with them, know that this seller has already been burned by one real estate agent, and they're not going to get burned twice. So they're probably going to interview multiple agents before they choose an agent. So unlike the referral where Wendy has given my accolades to her already when I call, Wendy's already sold me. I don't have to go prove myself. When I go on an expired listing appointment, there's going to be 3 other agents going on that same listing appointment. And so your conversion rate from appointment to listing is going to be much lower on an expired appointment than it is on a referral appointment. I think if you can convert 50% of your expired listing appointments, you're in the top 10% of expired listers. You should expect to get 1 out of 3 at first. But if you can get 3 appointments a week, which you should be able to get, you could get a listing a week. And that would be great, right?
Now, when you were calling expires regularly,
Yeah,
that's what we pretty much did. All of our business was listings,
yeah.
with expired listings.
Yeah, and it's really a matter of it's really a matter of time blocking. The hardest part is changing your habits, because if you're calling expired listings and literally you roll out of bed at 7:30 and brush your teeth and then sit down in front of your computer, check your email, send a couple of text messages, log into Vulcan and start dialing, you're not going to get any appointments. You're just not. You have to be ready. You need to be showered. You need to be ready to go on an appointment when you get off the phone with somebody. So that's the way that you start your day. When I'm finished with this phone call, I'm ready to go meet them at their house right now. You could literally grab your listing presentation, your briefcase, and your computer and walk out the door and go on the appointment. So when you sit down at 7:45, that's the mindset that you're in. You're absolutely ready to go. A couple of things on making these phone calls. They will wear you out. You have to have thick skin or learn how to have thick skin, because they're not trying to be mean to you, but you're going to get hung up on. You're going to get more rejection than you've gotten anywhere else in your life, probably calling expired listings. And if your mindset's not right and you're not prepared and you're not standing up straight at your stand-up desk and you're not smiling, when you get your third hang up in a row and you get your go F yourself and stop calling me and you're the fifth person who's called me and I'm going to report you, and this has gone on for 30 minutes and you've had nobody speak to you at all, if you're not mentally prepared for it, when that person does answer, you're no longer going to have the smile on your face. You're no longer going to be standing up straight, and you're going to miss that opportunity. And the whole reason you called was for that opportunity. So if you don't set yourself up for success with your mindset first, starts with thinking, right? What Wendy wrote on the board over there. If you want to improve your performance is driven by behavior. Behavior is driven by emotions. Emotions are driven by thinking. So if you want to improve your performance, start by changing your thinking.
I would add that before you start making these calls, because I know this was a challenge for me, I thought, I don't want to make people mad. I don't want to bother people. And I read this and it resonated with me, and I think it's 1,000% true. Even if they are like so mad on the phone and they hang up and they say whatever, they forget about you in like 30 seconds.
Oh yeah.
You have not ruined their day.
No.
You did not ruin their life. They didn't go kick their dog because you called. They're over it. In 30 seconds, they forgot you ever called.
They're not going to call all of your friends and tell them what a horrible person you are.
You did not ruin their day, even if they get really mad. So just like they're going to forget about it in 30 seconds, you have to forget about it in 30 seconds.
Not only that, they had this house for sale.
Yeah.
Somebody else that does the same job that you did failed to sell it.
Right.
If you actually believe that you know what you're doing and that you're good at your job, somewhere inside of you, you should have a moral obligation to want to help them. And if you bring that forward with all of your conversations, it's going to convey. It can't not. If you believe that you can do a better job than the person, if you believe that you can do a better job than the person that previously tried to sell it, and this is what you do for a living, and you're not calling them, what are you doing? Why aren't you calling them? Why aren't you solving their problem? You know, and if you come from that perspective, when that one person gets on the phone, right? Scott, I'm calling you. Ring, ring.
Hello.
Hi, is this Scott?
Yes.
Sorry, it's been a long time since I've actually called expireds. I have to cheat. Hi, Scott. My name is Ryan Ward. I'm with Premier Atlanta Real Estate. The reason for my call is your home shows up as off the market, so I'm curious if you plan to hire the right agent to sell it now.
I don't think so. I think we're just going to stay.
Just going to stay put. Yeah, I hear that a lot. So let me ask you a question, Scott. Had your home sold, I imagine you had some plans. Where were you going to go had it sold? Right? I don't want to go through the whole thing. I just kind of want to, you had your house for sale, right? Somebody failed to sell it. You were going somewhere. I'm sure, I am confident that my listing, marketing, my expertise, my ability to communicate and articulate to you and empower you to make the right decisions is going to cause you to have a different outcome than you had the last time you put your house on the market. And if you bring that into your conversation, you will be successful. You'll be successful with anything if you bring that kind of confidence in yourself. That's not egotistical. That's just confident in your ability, especially with expired listings. If you do that, you'll be successful.
I would also say something that James touched on was that the words that they use are very on purpose.
Yeah.
And you'll notice that none of these questions will ever start with why.
Right.
Because why sometimes can feel
Accusatory.
adversarial, so people get defensive.
Yes, you should.
Like you're asking them, well, why didn't it sell? It might seem like no big deal to ask them, why didn't it sell?
Yes.
Why do you think it didn't sell? But you'll notice all of these start with what.
Yeah, why? This is true with everything in life. Why questions will always, they imply that something somebody did was wrong. Why did you do that? Think about the last time your 5-year-old did something wrong. Why did you do that? Well, if I'm asking you why you did that, I'm implying that you should have done something different. Ergo, you did something wrong. So you never ask why questions of anybody. Very good point.
Yeah. Also, it depends on the context, but sometimes why, they say that when you ask a why question, immediately you're asking the person to go back in time.
Yeah.
Versus if you ask, what do you think it would take, for your house to sell this time? You're asking someone to think forward, and clearly they're going to have a negative feeling going back in time. You're asking them to relive
something
with why questions versus what is like a forward thinking.
Right.
How does that relate to the why do you think it didn't sell?
What do you think stopped it from selling?
And like, what do you think the agent could have done differently?
Right.
So, and that's could have in the future if he was doing it again.
If he was doing it again, it also allows you to understand what they want and what they perceive to have been the problem, so that then you can swoop in and solve that problem, or minimize that as a reason, whatever the case may be. They may...
And not even right there on the phone, but in your preparation for going on the appointment, you want to make sure that you address whatever he keeps saying was a stumbling point or something he'd want to see different.
Right.
You know that you need to focus on.
You may want to bring that up kind of once you get settled in there and say, I took some notes when we talked last time, and something that came up a number of different times was you said that your previous agent didn't do this. Tell me why that's important to you. You know?
That's important.
Right. Yeah. Anything else? So if you were going to call tomorrow, if any of you were going to get up tomorrow morning and call, what would be the first roadblock to prevent you from doing that we can solve right now?
Jazzercise.
That's hilarious.
Jazzercise.
I was actually thinking to myself, if you were worried about feeling in a bad mood after you make these calls at 8 o'clock, you should plan something happy. And in my mind, I was thinking, like jazzercise. But it wouldn't have to be that. It could be anything else.
Yeah.
You should plan something happy for 9:30. Yes, tennis. Go hit some tennis balls.
Exercise before raises your energy level and will make your calls go different.
I almost put exercise in there for part of your mindset, but I think that goes to an overall kind of holistic approach to any of this. If you exercise, especially cardio, before you do something like this, you will be in a better place to make these phone calls.
So set up your space the night before, right?
Yeah.
Have your
My
water,
space.
your snacks, your dialer stuff, whatever your scripts, have it all set up so all you have to do is walk into the space.
Right. So, Claire, you said you were going to start trying some expireds. What would be the first thing that you would be nervous of if you were going to sit down right now and make phone calls?
I don't like people being mad at me.
You don't like people being mad at you. That's a fair.
That's why I brought that up.
People
You have to remember that it's so short-lived.
That's a fair concern that gets inside of our heads when especially when you're making expired calls and it appears that you have made 5 people in a row mad, which will happen when you're calling expireds. But this goes back also not only to what Wendy said about how short-lived that is, but you really need to have a fundamental belief inside of you that you can solve that problem where somebody else couldn't solve that problem. And if you believe that, it comes from in here. And it comes through and out of the words that you're speaking, and it will just convey properly.
I think part of the difficulty there is knowing that you are potentially one of so many that are
Yeah,
calling.
that too.
If everybody knew that, you know what, I'm the only agent that is going to call this person today, potentially because there's not 30 other people, it would be a different mindset. It would be a different approach.
So you can jump in the deep end, and you can start with brand new expireds and just learn how to swim in the deep end right away. Or if that's not your cup of tea, get your list of expireds and go back 6 months, or even go back
30 days.
30 days even, but you could even go back a year or 2 years. Think about the conversations you can have with somebody who's failed to sell 2 years ago, right? That hasn't received a phone call in 6 months or 9 months from anybody. And you call them and you can explain to them how things are different today than they were then. And nobody else is there to make them mad before you call. So if you're afraid at first and you need to kind of get some calluses on your ego a little bit before you jump into the deep end with new expireds, start with the older expireds.
And just remember, you're there to help. I mean, it's
Yeah.
something that they're wanting to do, why not you?
Right.
I mean, if it's not you, it's gonna be another agent, so why not you?
But
That's the way I look
I
at it.
titled this class, can't go back to the beginning. I titled this class 12 Listings in 10 Hours a Week. And I did that because that's an easy ask for somebody who calls 10 hours a week to get 12 listings a year. If you call 10 hours a week, you should get a minimum of 2 appointments. Maybe not in your first couple of weeks. But you should definitely get a couple of appointments per week. And if you do the math and run that out over the course of the year, that's way more than 12 listings. And in today's market, if you can get a listing and you can empower people to make the right choices, you can close a sale, you can help these people move on to the next phase of their lives, which is kind of one of the things that we set out to do. All right, I'm being told we should wrap it up. Any other questions?
No. Thank you.
Great class.